Renee not quite willing to make that announcement. He have to say about what this month has been like for him, and is he behind where he should be? Where is he right now?
And whenever we talk to him, he's one of the best interviews on the team.
Correct.
He's a hilarious guy, straightforward and honest. So I asked him how difficult has it been competing for, you're dealing with an illness, you're competing for a starting job at a new position. So it's like you're getting all of these three things thrown at you, and you can't have a bad day. And he's like, yeah, it's not easy. And the quote was, football is hard. If you didn't love it, you'd hate it. And I thought that's pretty profound. Like he said, you'd really hate it. And it's true, because it's misery when you're ill and you're seeing somebody competing at the position that you moved to take. Like you are now a guard I'm going to be the right guard. I've got 12 games of starting experience. Last year as a redshirt freshman. I'm pretty much already the starting guard. And now it's like, now you're not quite back to ground zero, square one, because he's still competing, but you're not at square 12.
Right. You have taken the chute down. You thought you were starting up a significant ladder, and you have taken a little bit of a chute, a funky chute, Tony, down. And that is not probably where he was expecting to be at this point. Still in the fight, still in the battle as they sort of sort that out. And he is certainly whoever. I feel like we don't know who the top 5 is. We do know who the top 6 is at this point. And with some of the flexibility that they have there, where Carson Hinsman, if he's one of the top 6, well, he's played center before. He didn't, in fact, do that for an entire season before. You've got guys, Tigger Shabola has played at tackle before. You've got guys who they can sort of shuffle around a little bit.
And Carson Hinsman even said, don't forget, I was a right tackle my freshman year. He's like, 6'3" right tackle going against Jack Sawyer. That was fun.
Yeah.
But then I did remind him, hey, you're 6'5" on the roster. So
that's true. Yeah,
he credited Mick Marotti for that one.
There you go. Yeah, but just hanging from the bar. Yeah, so he is definitely one of those guys who he's going to have an impact. All the stuff that Ryan Day said about Tigger Shabola, he's going to play this year. You could say the same thing about Carson Hinsman. He's going to play this year. Does he start? We don't. We'll find out perhaps the next day or two. But
you start against Akron, somebody else may be starting against Penn State.
Sure, absolutely. So that's sort of the top offensive line. The depth of the offensive line, this is another one where every black cloud, every funky virus has a silver lining.
My favorite Grateful Dead song.
The silver, a touch of funky virus, a touch of silver lining. Yes.
Every ick has a silver lining.
Yes. That was with Poison, actually, who sang that song. Anyway, we're not here to talk about that. And we know Ohio State players not up to speed on 1970s or 1980s rock. So let's just move along and talk about the fact that some of those younger guys got an opportunity. You talked about, double dipping, and it sounds like a lot of that next tier of linemen, guys like Zen Michalski, guys like George Fitzpatrick, guys like Luke Montgomery, a bunch of those guys sound like they have really made the most of their opportunities. And now they're to the point where I don't know exactly where the circle of trust really truly begins and ends right now. Is that 6? Is that 7? Is that 8? Is that 9? But guys are certainly at the absolute minimum closer to the circle of trust now than they were just even a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, they're allowed to see it now. They're allowed into the room to watch from the back of the room. But Ryan Day said it earlier last week or recently, and Justin Frye just said it again. Like Zen Michalski and George Fitzpatrick have had their best camp, and you're seeing it out of them, and they are getting closer. Frye was asked, do you have a number 3 tackle yet? Same thing I asked Ryan Day last week, and it's still not decided yet because of the illness. And that they're going to have to figure that one out. But again, that's part of the sitting down in the coaches meetings and figuring out the 2 deep and where they go next. Didn't sound like it would be Tegra in terms of moving somebody out because they only want to do so much cross training, and if somebody's playing really well right now, you don't want to have all of these moving parts. It'd be better if it's just one tackle, plug in for one tackle, and so they're still trying to figure that out. I don't know who, and you can throw Austin Searville's name in there as well as one of those. I think it's going to be one of those 3. I don't know who else it could be. And Ian Moore has gotten some time with the 2s, but he's still just a true freshman. You're going to have to assume the older guys. These older second and third year players would be the guy that they would turn to.
Well, you go back 18 months and we're looking at an Ohio State football team that's like, well, how many tackles do they have on their team that they feel really good about right now? It's like, well, maybe 1, maybe. And now they feel very good about left and right tackle starting, Josh Simmons, Josh Fryer. It sounds like they're feeling pretty decent about Zen Michalski, George Fitzpatrick. Austin Searville, we've heard very positive things about. Ian Moore just lost his black stripe. You could now look and go, here's the 3 deep at Ohio State, at tackle for Ohio State, and they feel at least, if your 6th best tackles on the field, you probably have bigger problems at that point. So to have 2 guys behind the starters who are like at least okay, and two guys behind them who are at least maybe a year away from being at least okay. That feels like about as good a position as Ohio State has been in terms of depth at that tackle position in several years.
Yeah, and I'm reminded of Max Ray in 2020, who never played and then had to start against Michigan State and graded out a champion. And the preparation, everybody's doing it, and you know that you could be thrown in at any time. And if you're not taking it seriously, you will get exposed. And we've seen some linemen exposed around here, and they may have taken it seriously, but they still got exposed. And it's a double-edged sword. Like, you can be really prepared and still not be good, or you can be not prepared at all and be really, really terrible. And they don't want that to happen. There's a lot of pride going on in this room. The defensive linemen have talked about that, where they're seeing a different mentality and some, maybe more tenacity from the offensive line as a whole. And that's a credit to the veterans. I think that's a credit to Seth McLaughlin coming in. The rebirth of Carson Hinsman from ending the season last year and like re-engaging, and he credited his the teammates who have been through difficulties. Josh Fryer, has been. He's all Big Ten, and he's still being. Don't go onto social media, don't look at his mentions, because he was asked, "What's it like being an Ohio State football player?" He's like, "When it's good, it's really good. When it's bad, it's bad." And that's for a lot of these guys. And C.J. Stroud would tell you the same thing. J.T. Barrett would tell you the same thing. When it's bad, it's the worst thing that you never think about it in recruiting. He said the same thing. I never thought about that when I was going to become an Ohio State football player. The negativity that can be around you when something doesn't go perfect.
Yeah, the good news is a lot of people are paying attention. The bad news is a lot of people are paying attention. Let's just get a couple real basic points out before we get to the meat of the season, before we head into game week. Number 1, hit the thumbs up. Number 2, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Number 3, hit the bell. Number 4, don't at the players. Stop. Don't. Stop it. Stop.
Yeah.
You don't know. It's okay. No one is going to grade out 100%. That is not the bar. And this is probably worth a whole separate conversation, but if they lose a football game this year, it's not actually the end of the season. That's unless it happens in January. And even then, don't at the players.
Yeah.
That's
only then.
Not even then.
Okay.
Someone who probably has some experience with dealing with hostile people on social media. No, not you. Seth McLaughlin. This will be a little bit different because the fans will be spelling words correctly now as opposed to last season. But this is a transition year for him, although he said he feels very much like he's been here a long time already. He was at Alabama last year, ended their season in the Rose Bowl against Michigan, and then transferred to Ohio State just days later. And I think a lot of people at the time looked at that and said, ha, 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 there's that guy. And you haven't really seen any of that since he got here. He's been very consistent. He has clearly won the starting job. That has been one of those things that even going back to the spring, it was kind of like, you could see where this one was headed.
It's never been mentioned.
Right. He has just sort of been the guy, even though their last year's starting center was on the team, still on the team. And he has just sort of come in, stepped in, taken over that room, taken over that line. He's going to be making all those line calls. Every time you talk to someone about him, you hear how smart he is. You hear how he's just got a great grasp on everything. And he's, when we've watched practice, he's been consistent. When we've heard people talking about how he's been doing, it feels like he's been consistent. It feels like that's something that you think about where the center position was in the Cotton Bowl and the uncertainty moving, looking forward from that point. It feels like that is just problem solved, drama free, and moving forward just immediately.
And when I say like the coaches haven't even named him the starter, it's just that he's talked about as if he is, because he is.
Right.
Like, it's just an understood thing. And similar to what Ryan Day was saying when we talked to him earlier tonight, that a true freshman that has enrolled in January, he no longer considers them a freshman. They don't consider Seth McLaughlin a new guy now. Like, he knows the offense, knows the calls, is comfortable with that, has obviously been dealing with a defensive line that puts you to the test, and he's come through it. And so I think they're very, very comfortable with him, and he's comfortable with his teammates. And so it's been pretty seamless, very positive. And it's just another veteran voice. He's making all of the calls, getting everybody where they need to be, and is just a command of the job that wasn't always there, and certainly wasn't there in the Cotton Bowl. And so now it's just a new level of just confidence, and you're sure about what you're doing, and your teammates are sure about what you're telling them. So like everybody's playing more confidently because they know the guy giving them the instruction has it right.
Right. And you know that the guy next to him is Donovan Jackson. He's been a multi-year starter and a fourth-year player. Josh Fryer, same thing, multi-year starter now, fourth-year player. It's such a reliable, I think is probably a good, it's not the most exciting word, but it feels like Josh Simmons. Look at how far Josh Simmons came just in the course of last season, and now he's had a whole nother off season. It just feels like you want your offensive line almost to be boring.
Yeah.
It's like long snappers, right? If you don't know the name of your long snapper is probably doing a pretty good job. If your offensive line, you don't see people complaining about the offensive line is probably doing an amazing job, because if they're doing their job, you don't notice. It feels like you're trending towards a season where you don't see a ton of complaining about Ohio State's offensive line, unless you use the word recruiting, in which case then everything's falling apart. But that's a whole separate story, Tony. We don't even have time to get into that one because we do have to talk a little bit. You mentioned earlier the other side of the ball, talking about the linebacker position, the will linebacker position. It does sound like Ryan Day was not ready to announce a starter yet, right? But
no, not yet. But he did tell me that Sonny is the leader in the clubhouse. So I asked him how the transition's going, and he just raved about everything that Sonny did. And then I'm like, well, so is he your number one? He's like, well, still that is still yet to be decided. But then he's like, yeah, but he is the leader in the clubhouse, which tells you the answer right there. And of course, that just begs the question of what does this mean for CJ Hicks? And they'll find areas to use him, but just the understanding of the defense that Sonny Styles has, coming from safety now to linebacker, has gotten better and more confident from the spring, which they expected, and they knew it would be a process. That process seems like it's ready to go now. So I think there's certainly a reason for optimism when you've got a former 5-star number one safety in the land who is now bigger and faster and stronger than he was as a 6'4", 230-pound safety.
You look at pictures of him, every once in a while you'll see a guy who comes in looking one way, and then just a couple of years later you look and it's like, that can't possibly be the same human being. He might be the best example of that on this year's team. One of the other things that Ryan Day got asked about, speaking of places where they probably don't need the absolute greatest performance in the world, but just pretty good would be plenty good for Ohio State at the quarterback position. Ryan Day was asked, okay, sure, you're probably going to have good enough there. What is the ceiling for Will Howard this year?
Well, in the ceiling, he talked about everything that Will Howard does well, all of his positive traits. He's big, he's strong, stands in the pocket with the rush coming. He's gotten more accurate, the most accurate he's ever been in his career. 22 miles an hour, like all of these different things. And in terms of his ceiling, he's like, well, you still have to, that's up to him basically. Like, but he has all of the traits that project well to the next level. And I guess that's really what you want to hear about a quarterback. And then it's just about the execution. He has all of the traits that you need. He's got the mobility. He's got the arm. He's shown the accuracy. He's comfortable in the pocket. He's not bailing out, at the first sign of distress. So there's plenty to work with. And you got Ryan Day, you got Chip Kelly, you got these receivers, you got this running game, you got a solid offensive line. There's a lot to like about the possibilities. But as we keep saying, I still want to see it. Right. You still want to see it actualized. But we said the same thing about Justin Fields in 2019.
Sure. You don't know until you see it for sure on the field. And even when you see it against Akron, there's going to be enough of, well, sure, but can you do it against Marshall?
Joe Bowser may beat Akron.
That is true. That is, of the many true facts about that era of Ohio State football, that is unquestionably one of them. He is someone who, the trajectory with Will Howard is such that he came in and, there were opposing fan bases that, got their lulls in, Tony, as the kids say. It was funny that Ohio State was taking this guy who had gotten beaten out air quotes, at Kansas State, and boy, this is the savior. And in the spring looked fine, but had not clearly separated. This fall looked very different, and you're sort of talking to people about him. There was a lot of work that went into that, and a lot of physical development, mental training, just straight up reps out on the practice field. When you get that much better in the span of 6 months, that's not a process that just stops. It's not, and here's the finish line and the race is over. That's something that several guys talked about, that they can't be happy with where they are right now. They can't do the Nick Saban rat poison thing and go, well, everyone says we're going to be playing Georgia in the national championship game, so sim to January 20th in Atlanta. That's not how it works. So they've got to get there, and they know they've got to keep improving. But if you improve that much from January to August, feels like there's probably going to be more improvement after that too.
From August to January.
Yes.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And everybody that we talk to is high on him because they've seen it. They've seen not just like, oh, he's playing well right now. They've seen where he's come from as well. And like you said, now is not the time to plateau. And I don't think he's planning on plateauing.
I'm quite certain that no one is planning on plateauing.
That'd be a good question. Will, about ready to level out, you think?
Well, one of the most beloved figures in Ohio sports is Jose Mesa. Now, his name means table. It's another word for plateau. Would you like to Mesa? No? Okay. Well, what if the Florida Marlins are on the schedule?
No, Tom.
No? Okay.
No.
Okay. No. Okay.
There go the super chats.
Okay. So, Kevin, do we have any questions?
Got more coming after that Jose Mesa.
Aaron Taylor, when they go good on good, is the OL or DL winning?
Well, that was an interesting point brought up by Carson Hinsman, and Ryan Day, I think, said something similar. But Carson was asked about the Chip Kelly influence on the running game, and I tweeted it out because he's loving it, and he said like I don't want to say something I shouldn't, but we're doing well against the Ohio State defense at times.
I don't want to say something I shouldn't is the thing that happens right before the best moment of the press conference.
But he's very excited. He's like, when they look at the script before practice, they're like, we're running this out of this. Oh, this is crazy. And so the excitement, and then you do it, you're like, it works against this defense. So they're all excited, but the defensive line we know has won plenty. And not just because the offensive line has been ill, but because it's a pretty good defensive line. So I think, as Ryan Day said, you've seen some back and forth, which is exactly what you want to see.
Right. You don't want one unit completely dominating the other. We have seen those years, and generally those years end up with, how did Oregon State score 31 points against this team? How did the offense only score 7 points at Iowa? You end up with a lot of those kind of seasons when one team is one side of the ball is completely dominating the other. When you sort of know, the expectation is this is going to be one of, if not the best defenses in the country, and the offense is at least sort of holding its own. The offense doesn't have to be the best in the country. If the offense is top 5 in the country and the defense is number 1, that might be plenty to win a national championship.
Geiger Lee. Who will likely have the best O-line in the Big Ten this year and why?
So the best O-line in the Big Ten this year and why? I think Ohio State's in that conversation. You go through, Michigan has always been the sort of default answer if it's not Wisconsin or if it's not Michigan State. It's certainly not Michigan State. It's probably not Wisconsin. Michigan is replacing literally everyone on the offensive line. I don't know. Iowa is got, I think, most folks back, so Iowa's probably going to be in that conversation. Oregon is definitely going to be in that. Yeah, Oregon's going to be in that conversation. Penn State just lost a first-round tackle, so they're probably going to be reloading.
But James Franklin has a really good history of building offensive lines.
You're thinking of clock management. I think the offensive lines in the Big Ten are going to be. I don't know that there is an absolute mauler of an offensive line, classic Wisconsin offensive line, Joe Moore level. I don't know that you're going to see that level of offensive line play in the Big Ten this year, but Ohio State is going to be in the top tier, which for the unit that everyone was sort of most concerned about for most of the year, that's a pretty good outcome.
Well, and not to steal my own thunder with the bold prediction show tomorrow morning at 11 a.m., let's say. But there's gonna be some Joe Moore talk with this offensive line, I believe. And I did this study back in the winter, like February or March, and the number of returning starts that this offensive line has is almost identical to the Michigan offensive line last year. The number of veterans and just that they had six or seven guys they considered starters. I think you're talking about an Ohio State offensive line that will have six guys that they consider starters.
Yeah. I think this is going to be to go from the big concern and the thing that derailed the Cotton Bowl and all the uncertainty that was coming out of that 2023 season to where they are now is pretty remarkable.
Yep.
Fort Wayne Buckeye. How long until Tom buys his son a McClarty jersey?
Oh, that's a good question.
How long until Tom buys his son a Nick McClarty jersey? Have we talked about this on the show? My son, when he was young,
Purdue
yes,
fan?
yes, I think so. Yes, my son, when he was very little, was a big fan of trains, as many young boys are. Watched a lot of Thomas the Tank Engine in my house. So when he found out there was a team that had a train logo, thought, oh, that is going to be my team. And this happened to be the year of our Lord 2018. And I said, son, I'm going to let you make your own choices. But I will tell you, on the whole, you are going to enjoy football season more if you are rooting for Ohio State than if you're rooting for Purdue. Now, you remember the year of our Lord 2018 as the year when Ohio State made a trip to Purdue. And you know what kids think is real funny? When dad is real wrong about something. And so, yes, I have a Purdue fan in my house. So that's fine. He enjoys basketball season a lot more than many Ohio State fans have. So it's worked out fine. So, yes, I think there will be plenty of Nick McClarty jerseys sold around the greater central Ohio area with or without my kid.
Yeah, there you go.
Also, Zabo, any new injuries to know about or updates on prior ones? Is Donovan Jackson okay?
Well, were you over there for Donovan Jackson?
I was over there for some of Donovan
Okay.
Jackson. I did not hear him get asked about an injury. My impression is that he's out there still.
Well, I mean, Justin Frye said he's been out.
Yes.
But I don't know. I like I said, I was planning on watching that after the fact to see what he says. But no, I don't. It doesn't seem serious, or else they wouldn't have him out here talking.
Correct.
That's
yes.
usually the main signal.
Correct. Yeah, we have not seen any indication in terms of he's coming in here without any pads on.
Yeah, he's always
wearing.
dressed.
He's dressed. He's wearing his braces. He's not in a limited contact jersey. Everything about what we're seeing and hearing right now suggests precautionary. It's the week before the Akron game. It's the week before the Akron game. So there's absolutely no reason to push anything right now. Other than that, the injuries, I think, have been.
Yeah, Lorenzo Styles is back.
Yeah, Lorenzo Styles is no longer in a limited contact. It's been pretty.
Jaden Bonsu is about.
Yeah,
that's one.
Yeah.
But even that's doesn't seem to be serious or anything like that. So.
Yeah, we are not aware of any long-term injuries at this point. Is probably the best way to say that.
All right, this is a longer one from Fort Wayne. For the right guard battle, do you think they'll give Tegra and Carson time with the starters in the early games, or just pick one to go develop chemistry and the other one only plays with the twos?
So that's a really good question from Fort Wayne. Will they do the Cade McNamara, JJ McCarthy thing where you can play both guys and you got a couple winnable games at the beginning of the season so you can play both guys, or do they just pick a guy and say go? And if you take Ryan Day at his word, I don't know that they've made a decision yet on that.
Yeah, no, I think both guys will play. He did say Tegra's going to play. I would assume Carson's going to play. I think the scenario there is that, yeah, they will both play with the ones. And, that can be a couple of series in the second quarter or however you want to do it. You can experiment. It's not even experimentation but it's just getting those guys snaps. I expect that to happen in the first half of at least the first two games until by then maybe they've got it settled. And because I do think they want to give Carson more runway because he's had such a short road for camp.
Right. It's probably not a fair thing to take a guy who was a starter last year and Wally Pip him because he had the ick, Tony. So you probably, it seems like that's probably not going to be a firm and final decision is made this weekend, and that's the guy who's with the ones for the whole rest of the season, and there's no question about any of that kind of stuff. I don't think it's going to be that kind of a decision, because I think it's probably a relatively close thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that it's close and you sort of know you have one of the available pieces of information was this guy was good enough to play as on the interior of the Ohio State offensive line for all of last year and do a pretty good job, and has now had another year of growth and development. And there's another guy who's about as good as he is, whether slightly ahead or slightly behind. That's good. That means you've got 6 guys now who are in that probably good enough kind of range.
Well, and one last thing I'll throw in there. I asked Carson about Luke Montgomery, how he's doing at center. And he said it's pretty sick that Luke can snap left-handed, and he calls him the hefty lefty. But that's just another guy that is developing, who can play pretty much anywhere on the offensive line to make that top 7, a top 10, top 8. Like you've got guys that can play multiple positions to make that room even deeper.
Hefty lefty, of course, a very popular youth softball cheer for when you have a left-handed batter up. Tony, you know what the opposite of that is?
Slidey righty.
Mighty righty, Tony. Mighty righty.
Actually, the opposite would be slidey, as opposed to hefty.
Anyway.
I'm not wrong.
Anyway, yeah, please let Tony know in the chat if he's wrong. Well, thank you guys all for joining us. We have wrapping up the 3rd straight evening at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. Next week, we're on a game week schedule. The Ohio State Buckeyes will be back, I'm assuming
Tuesday at noon
with Ryan Day, and then maybe a coordinator. And then Wednesday evening, we generally get a smattering of players and one more chance to talk to Ryan Day after practice on Wednesday. And then Thursday, Friday, Saturday, it is an Ohio State football game day at Ohio Stadium. Can't believe it's almost here.
Yeah.
8 days away. Looking forward to that. One thing you may be looking forward to slightly less than that is the Buckeye Weekly preseason bold prediction show that will be coming up Friday morning, 11 a.m. on youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle. We'll make sure we get a link up there and a placeholder so you have that link ready to go. We'll try and tweet that out, but the best way to make sure you are there to tell Tony that he is in fact not being bold is by being a subscriber to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle. Hitting that bell so you get notified when we go live on shows like this, because sometimes, especially in these midweek interview shows, sometimes it's 45 minutes early, sometimes it's 45 minutes late. It's always an exciting mystery what time the Ohio State interviews will start during game weeks. And so the best way to make sure you get notified whenever we do go live is to hit that bell. So that I think we'll do it for this evening. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.